How do you know it's anxiety?
Well, a lot of times you got to think about it. We all have a baseline, right? So it's knowing where you are. There's certain things that are going to trip you up, right? But then when you're starting to ruminate over the thoughts, and it's like, it's hard for you to shake it, and it's lasting longer periods. And it's kind of just like, it's not just, okay, well, I spilled the water. Okay, well, I can clean it up. No, I spilled the water. And if I spilled the water, it's going to get all over the carpet. And if it gets all over the carpet, it's going to leave a stain. And if it leaves a stain, then what am I going to do? I just spent all this money on it, and I can't afford to go take it. And it kind of starts as a snowball effect. And you saw how small it was. I spilled the water. How did I create a whole notion around something that I could just easily put a paper towel on?
I'm not afraid to write a brand new story. And what changes find a way to me, I can keep it moving. I'm not afraid to celebrate my glory. And when challenges grace my path, I know I can face another day. Inside, I rise, daring to learn. With Fox After 40.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Fox After 40, where we focus on women's wellness from head to toe. Today, we have Laura Michelle here to talk with us about mental health after 40. Stop being Superwoman and save yourself. So let's get into this episode.
Yes.
Lauren, please tell us your background, where you're from,
Okay.
how long you've been doing what you do, and how you got into it.
All right. So I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. I'm a certified life coach. And I'm also a consultant and women's advocate. So I've been doing a lot of things. All those fancy titles mean I just love helping women become the best version of themselves. I've been a therapist for almost 15 years now, which is crazy to even think of. But it's been the best career pivot for me because I went to school for journalism. Okay. And then from that standpoint, I graduated in 2008. Recession hit, couldn't find a job to save my life. And so I got into counseling because I just needed something to be excited about when I got up in the morning. And I just didn't know it was going to turn into the best decision I could have ever made for myself, getting into therapy. So I started my practice in 2018 in Chicago for Cultivate Your Essence. It's a mental health private practice. We are dedicated to working with women of color while prioritizing Black women's mental health. And I especially stress Black women's mental health because we need a safe space for us. So we have a location in Chicago, and we just recently opened in Atlanta.
That's so beautiful. Why Black women specifically?
You know what? I feel as though we are the most utilized, with the most unprotected, the most cared about, the most disrespected, honestly. And not only that, we don't have safe spaces for us. We come in always thinking like we have to be Superwoman. We put our cape on, we show up for everybody else, but rarely do we have a safe space for us to be able just to let our hair down and to be seen, because my whole entire team is filled with Black women therapists. So you meeting with a Black woman from the intake appointment, from the person who is our COO, from our HR director, from our CFO, all the way down to our clinical staff. That's how in depth I am about making sure Black women are at the center and the heart of everything.
Oh, come on, team.
Yeah.
You listed a lot of people.
Because it takes a lot to get here.
What does it look like for someone who's listening is like, oh, I don't know if I would consider myself a Superwoman, right? Now, and you see your clients, and you know what it looks like to somebody who is being a Superwoman. Can you define that for us? What does that look like from people who don't know that they're that, but they're going through X, Y, and Z?
Well, I don't think a lot of people are still aware of that whole Superwoman syndrome. And so with Superwoman syndrome, it's kind of like this idea that we have to be perfect, that we always have to be on, that not only do we have to worry about our immediate families, but we have to worry about everything else. We're always the first person to sign up to do whatever the task is, especially if we don't trust the people to do their jobs correctly, whatever that job may be, whether it's with your kids, whether it's professionally. But we're constantly, and it's almost ingrained in us, because 9 times out of 10, we saw our moms do it. We saw our aunties do it. We saw the women at work do it. It's kind of like you're everything to everybody. And we look at that as a badge of honor while we're killing ourselves in the process. So it's a lot of times it's not uncommon for women to not even realize they're doing it, because if you've been seeing that from the beginning, why would you think anything differently? You know, we have to be shown different things in order to say, hey, this isn't right. And it was one actress, I cannot remember her name, but she was from Queen Sugar. She played Aunt Vi. And she said, it's inhumane the amount of pressures and standards they put on Black women without even offering to help us in any way, shape, or form. So that's why I'm really big on the educational piece, but I'm also big on, okay, where are you at on your own priority list? Because 9 times out of 10, I'll have my clients say, okay, what all is on your list? By the end of it, they still haven't named themselves.
You know, I have this theory in my house. Some balls will be dropped. I was like, you know, I'm not going to do everything right. I have one good friend, Elise. You probably know her. Cut It Kinky Hair Care.
Probably, yes.
And she said, you know, either I look good and the kids look good or the house looks good. She said, it's never all three. It's either two. If the kids look good and the house look good, I don't look good. If I look good and the kids look good, the house don't look good. If the kids in the house look good, I don't look good. You know what I mean? It's just so funny to me. I'm like,
but that's real. Think about how many times if we actually embrace that, the pressures that it would take off of us. Everything doesn't have to be perfect.
But then, okay, well, how do you deal with, okay, for example, I had a friend come to my house. She knows very intimately how hard I'm working, what I'm working on, my business, this and that. When the kids are at home during COVID and stuff like that, or they weren't in school yet, and I had 2 boys under the age of 4 at the time, I would throw them in PJs, like pajama slip, you know, onesies all the way up to their chest. And then I would not always do their hair. And so when she would come over, she'd be like, you don't never dress your kids, do you? You know, and I was like,
ooh, shade and judgment.
Yeah, girl, we not friends no more. But
I was gonna say.
But I remember I was not someone who's easily offended in general.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself that way. But it was then that I realized, oh, you expect my kids to look a certain way all the time, even though you know I have all these other responsibilities. And it kind of hurt my feelings.
I would even take it a step further, though. I would only imagine what is the unrealistic expectation she has of herself, because that was honestly a projection she placed on you.
Well, she don't have kids, you know, so.
Well, it don't even matter. It's not even about that. Again, there's this idea that we have to always be on.
Yeah.
Right? And if you notice, especially in the Black community, it's kind of like we have to always be on. We can't let people see us sweat. We can't show any type of weakness or vulnerability, because what could be the consequences of that, right? So why wouldn't you be on even though you're in the comforts of your own home?
Yeah. If you've enjoyed this episode of Fox After 40 and want to get notified about the next episode when it drops, make sure to go to curlmix.com and sign up for our mailing list. We'll notify you whenever a new episode comes out. What are some of the side effects? People come into you dealing with X, Y, and Z, and it's really just an outcome or an effect of being Superwoman.
It's burnout. And when I say burnout, I'm talking about in life. Like, you know how people can just literally go through the motions of everything, but there's no real attachment to it. There's no heart placed behind it.
How do you know there's no heart in it? Can you give me a story? And of course you can't tell me like anything specific about anybody.
You know what? I can actually just share from my own personal experiences. During the pandemic, we were all adjusting, but I don't think people really took into account what therapists were going through during that time period, because now that energy that we would usually reserve for our office spaces, they're in our homes. And then we still have to get up and we have to go through the motions of working, making sure our families and stuff. And for me, I remember at one point in time, I'm just like, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna run the group. Okay, I'm gonna see my 12 clients this week. Okay, fine. Then I'm gonna get this done and then I'm gonna take care of that. And then it got to a place where I remember I just broke down in the shower and I was like, I'm not okay. And I never knew it because I just had been going through the motions. But it was a vulnerable time where, you know what triggered it? I was taking 2 weeks off. And I didn't even take really a 2 weeks off. I took like a week off from work. And then I remember when it was time for me to go back, I said, I'm not ready and I'm not okay. Right? Mm-hmm. And it was just like I had been going through the motion so hard, I didn't realize that I'm exhausted. Even when I get good night's sleep, I'm still waking up tired. I'm having more stress and anxiety about things in the background that normally it's like it comes and goes, but it doesn't normally last this long.
How do you know it's anxiety?
Well, a lot of times you got to think about it. We all have a baseline, right? So it's knowing where you are. There's certain things that are going to trip you up. Right? But then when you're starting to ruminate over the thoughts and it's like, it's hard for you to shake it and it's lasting longer periods. And it's kind of just like, it's not just, okay, well, I spilled the water. Okay, well, I can clean it up. No, I spilled the water. And if I spilled the water, it's going to get all over the carpet. And if it gets all over the carpet, it's going to leave a stain. And if it leaves a stain, then what am I going to do? I just spent all this money on it and I can't afford to go take it. And it kind of starts as a snowball effect. And you saw how small it was. I spilled the water. How did I create a whole notion around something that I could just easily put a paper towel on? Right? So when we're thinking about anxiety, when we're thinking about depressions, it starts small. And here's the thing, we're all going to feel an anxious moment. We're all going to feel a depressive moment. But when it's lasting longer, typically, according to our standards, 3 months, that's something we need to check in on. And again, these aren't things that we're taught, or we're even taught to even know that that's something to pay attention to, because a lot of times it's kind of like snap out of it. That's a choice. It's not.
What is the clinical definition of depression? And you said this is what we're taught, that it's 3 months, but you think there's so I would, and the reason I asked this is because I feel like, I'm like, oh, I don't know that I've ever been depressed because I don't know that my sadness has lasted for 3 to 6 months. But, you know, there are things I'm sad about for a year, but they don't stop me from getting out of bed. You know what I'm saying? But they make me sad when I think about them.
Yeah.
Like, how do you define that?
Okay, so I'm going to try to take something complicated and make it real simple. So when we're talking about an episode, that could last. So let's say when somebody you care about passes away, right? And there can be, if depending on how close the relationship it was, it could last for, like, let's say an episode. An episode can say, okay, few weeks here and there, but you're still able to move forward, right? But the thoughts never leave. You just learn how to kind of progress with it. If you want to talk about something that's more chronic, now we're looking at the 3 to 6 months, where it's kind of like you're starting to notice there's a body reaction to it, right? There's almost like a heaviness that comes over on you. There is this perpetual sadness that it doesn't feel like it's lifting at any point in time. There's this idea that if I just do this or do that, then it can change. When in reality, no, your mind and your body is going through something. And sometimes it could be a matter of, let's talk about this. Sometimes it could be a matter of, let's take medication to help us kind of get through the moment. But you have to pay attention to, if this is my baseline and I'm not even coming up to my baseline, then okay, what are some of the things that I'm doing now that is not a part of who I normally am? And it's really taking the time to study yourself. Did that help, or do you need me to go?
I think so. So, but can you have bodily reactions in the shorter term as well? Like anxiety for me, I'll know that when I have a hard day at work, I'll feel it in my chest. I'll be like, whew, that was a heavy day. My back will feel a little tense, and like I'll almost feel my blood pressure like get higher. And I'm like, my mom had high blood pressure. I have to be careful. And so then I'm like, okay, I can't be stacking days like that. Right. So that might be like my Monday. Tuesday is going to be more chill. I'm gonna make sure I have a fewer meetings on my calendar. I'm gonna block out some time to work. Like I won't be, maybe I'll stand when I work. Like it just won't be as intense. But those 12-hour days, sometimes they feel like that. So I am trying to listen to my body more. But how do you, so I want our listeners to be able to identify what anxiety feels like, what depression is. Is there another one that we should look out for?
Those are the two main ones that I think are most pertinent. I also want to take into account grief and loss. Okay. Because I don't think people look at that as in depth as they probably should, because we're not taught that again. But when we're talking about grief and loss, we're not just talking about somebody you lost. It could be grief and loss towards the things that you thought you would have had. The career, the husband, the children, the different things that you thought were going to go right in your life that hasn't necessarily. So paying attention to that bereavement as well. There's not a real diagnosis for it, but it is just saying adjustment disorder, to where it's some things that's going on right now I'm having a hard time adjusting to, and I can't figure out what it is the next step to do. Those are something.
That is so good, because I feel like a lot of women, as they transition in life, right? 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. And you had these ideas, dreams, and goals. Maybe you thought you were going to be a mother. Maybe you thought you were going to be a wife. Maybe you thought you're going to be at this place in your career. And then you kind of come to a realization that either that's not going to happen for me, or that I'm going to have to change my life real quick to get it to there. How do you coach people through that process of how to handle that? Like, for example, somebody who maybe thought they wanted to have kids and it's like, okay, that may not be in the cards for me. Or please talk me through that, because I don't know.
I think, you know what, one of the things that a lot of people don't take into account, give yourself the permission to grieve it. And when I say grieve it, that could be crying, that can be cursing, that you need to get it out. I think a lot about women who were supposed to get married during the pandemic, and it was a hard time because you paid the money, you did all these things, and now all of a sudden that is being ripped away from you. And I had to tell them, grieve that. You're entitled to that part, right? So give yourself that grace. Now, once you kind of allowed yourself to grieve that in a healthy way, okay, let's look at all the options at this point. Because I think a lot of times it's not necessarily that the goal has changed. Our route to getting to the goal is got to change. And we have to be more flexible on how we get there. So for somebody who said, I really wanted to have a baby, okay, maybe you can't physically have a baby. Can you step up as an aunt somewhere? Is the idea of adoption out the idea? Or how about surrogacy? There's other options to get to the goal. It just may not have been in the traditional sense. And I think a lot of times we look at life in such a linear perspective that we don't give room for life to life and for miracles to happen and for different perspectives to come in, because it definitely helps to open up your pathways of thinking like, okay, that's the goal. Where are all the other options to get there? And being okay with that, because a lot of times, again, that's another grieving process. I wanted to be able to have, I'm just using a baby because it's easier. I wanted to be able to have the baby myself, right? So when you started to see people like Candy or people like Gabrielle Union talking about getting a surrogacy, think about a lot of the shame that they felt with that, right? Well, I didn't have that. I'm not a real woman. Yes, you are. It's still your child. Even though it was their egg, that person was just literally holding it for them, right? Removing the shame around it, because at the end of the day, you get to define what that experience is for you, and being open. And I know I keep reiterating that part, but it is being open to, okay, life is not always going to go the way I thought. How can I still get there? Because the dreams inside of you doesn't die.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, because it's not going our way, we allow it to die in the process.
What are some healthy choices you've seen women make in their life that may be unpopular for the people around them?
So I'll take it even on a superficial level. When you were talking about, your friend that was judging you about everything that was going on, right? So unpopular things: get the nanny, get the house cleaner, get somebody who can cook for you, get somebody who can take care of your home for you, whatever that means. And I know everybody doesn't always have the disposable income, but grandma's still available, friends are still available. Allow your village to be a part of that, and you get to define what the village is, because now we're starting to see it's a little bit more acceptable. But we still got some people from back in the day be like, back in my day, you just took care of and you handled your responsibilities. Back in y'all day, y'all didn't even know y'all had mental health issues. Back in y'all day, y'all didn't realize that wasn't the same thing. Back in y'all day, y'all used to whoop people and y'all would go to jail for that now. Like, come on now. So there has to be a change in the mindset around those things. You don't have to be Betty Crocker. You don't have to be Superwoman. What do you get from being Superwoman? Do we get any? Is that a salary?
No, girl. Ain't
Because
no
if
awards.
that's the case, I want all my money back, and I want back pay. Okay, I want my money back, because there's no badge, there's no extra rewards you get for playing the martyr.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we'll have that in the back of my mind. Well, I have to do this because for what?
Okay, so this, for all of our career women out there who are high achieving and really want these promotions and these board seats and these, corporate gigs and just to be at the top, and they're like 50 plus and they're like, hey, I've been doing this for a long time. I deserve to be a seat at this particular table. What are some of the issues you see them kind of come in with in therapy, and like, what do they typically have to work through?
So unfortunately, what we're seeing, and I think it's always been going on, but now we just have the language for it. We're seeing a lot of corporate trauma. So if you notice, like the woman who killed herself at Langston University, and she was saying she felt bullied in the workplace, again, showing up, doing more and more and more. But then I guess in the letter, do not hold me accountable to everything that was said. But I think those are some of the things that were coming up. A lot of people, especially women of color, are suffering in silence because we don't realize there's power in your voice, but there's also support. So a part of it is you need to be talking to a therapist. And I always stress that, but at least it helps you to get whatever these anxious thoughts are and these feelings off the wall. And now you're having somebody from a third party who's not biased to throw things at, right? And to throw things at the wall and to see what can stick. But also too, finding mentorship within the workplace or even somewhere outside that particularly, I'm always big on somebody who looks like you, who can understand that setting that you're coming from, right? So if you're, a lot of times, some of us are like first generation corporate, and I have a lot of clients who are. So they're running to their parents to give them some type of support and guidance. That's a whole world they can't relate to. So you need to seek out people who look like you, who understand your walk of life. That way, even if neither one of you guys have the answer, there's a sense of support there that you can bounce things off of, that you can brainstorm around, but also the sense of support and being seen and validated in your experiences. Because a lot of times, if you don't have anybody who shares that common theme with you, you're led to believe like, I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's wrong. Is something wrong with me? No, it's not. It's not. So building community and village for yourself, that is the best thing that you can ever do. And there's studies around that, because women in their 40s, typically you'll see a career change for them. And so now it's kind of like, now's the time to be honest. I want a seat at the table. Is it this table that I want it from?
Wow.
Right? Is it this company that's going to provide that for me? Now I'm also looking at it, I'm at 40, because now we're looking at everything that's behind us and we're realizing, okay, we only got, I don't want to sound morbid, but we got fewer years ahead of us. So we want to make sure that time is spent memorable.
Yeah.
Right? So now we're thinking about not only job security, but my mental health. I want to enjoy what I do, where I do it. I want to make sure that my values are being represented in that company. And sometimes that makes mean either I got to work my butt off here, or I need to find someplace else where I can get that.
If you've gotten any value from listening to Fox After 40, you learned a beauty tip, you've gotten advice, you shared the episode with a friend, please do us a favor and leave us a review on Spotify and Apple. It goes a very long way in helping us continue to build the podcast. You talked about, and I love that you mentioned this, community and village and, career shifts, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about anxiety and depression, how to recognize it. We talked about things that you can do to relieve that, which is outsourcing some of the work and not having to do everything yourself.
Yep.
Talk about maybe changing your careers to be in a place where you want a seat at that table and, not in these toxic work environments. But we got to talk about friendships, because I feel like every decade there's a shift in my friendships. Friends that I thought I would have for life, that friendships broke up. Maybe they'll rekindle. I don't know. Friends that I wanted to distance myself from. Friends that I felt like maybe I intimidated them or something like that. Friends that I felt like I couldn't be honest around anymore.
Yeah.
What does friendships look like for women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond? And what is your recommendation for women who are looking for community, who are looking to build those friendships, but trying not to be too aggressive, you know what I mean? And to like, I want to be at this, and I want to come to your house for this. And how do you how are you making friends in the second part of life?
I think one of the biggest things is find out what brings you joy and just show up in those areas, right? So finding events that speak to who you are, finding different communities. And it's not saying you're going to hit it right off the bat. What you have to be open towards is just like when you're showing up for a job interview. You don't know if you're going to get that job. That's why you interview for a whole bunch of other different jobs, right? It's in the same way. You're showing up in these different environments that speak to who you are as this woman, because we've changed from when we were 10, we changed from when we're 20, we changed from our 30s. So it's natural for friendships to kind of dissipate because we're not the same people. The season that I met you in may not be required for this season of my life. And recognizing that sometimes it don't have to be a big blowout. It just, we outgrew each other. And sometimes we also have to realize, are we putting effort into those relationships?
Right. When should they be rekindled?
I need you to be honest with yourself and say, okay, what role did I play in the demise of this? I always go back to Molly and Issa.
Off of Insecure?
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at the breakdown of those relationships, they were both two women going in two different directions. However, one was evolving, one was staying stuck, and they would ping pong as to which one was which, right? But it came down to a point. Molly got help. Issa started to develop and grow, and she couldn't lean on Molly as much anymore. Molly had to take ownership of the part of, ooh, okay, I may be the judgmental one in this. Again, projecting my own opinions as to what I think we all should be doing. You have to take inventory of those relationships, right? Because when you're taking inventory, it's no different than a romantic relationship. And if anything, I think people can recognize friendships breakups are harder than romantic relationships because you were the one person that I just knew was never going to leave my side, right? Right? So now it's kind of like, okay, if I'm sewing into romantic relationships, if I'm sewing into my job, I have to sew into my friendships as well. And that way I can recognize, is it time for us to grow apart? Or if it really is a matter of we just have to work at this relationship a little bit harder. And when you're showing up into these new friendships, go into with no expectations. See where it kind of develops. I think we a lot of times forget, even in dating, you're not supposed to say, okay, I met the person. This is good. You're going to be my person. No, okay. No, you don't know. That's the first date. That's the first date. You're going and you're collecting data on who these people are and how they fit. And also for you to recognize, are you a good fit for them in their relationships too? Because I think we have unrealistic expectation. We want that one friend to be everything. That's not fair. I may be good at helping you process your emotions. My other friend may be good at helping you manage your money. The other friend might be good at supporting you as a mom. You have to recognize who plays what role.
Yeah.
And expect what they can give you in that. That's not fair to throw unrealistic expectations at them.
I want to talk about love after 40.
Ooh.
You know, and I think most people are expecting to get married in their 20s and 30s. And, you know, people may be divorced by their 40s and 50s, or, you know, or separated 20s. Or 20s.
I met some.
But what does love look like after 40? What are your clients like looking for? Are they still hoping for the love that they wanted in their 20s, or are they finding more love for themselves and they're like, no, I don't want to be married at all? Like, what are you seeing?
That is the trend I'm more so seeing. Like the idea of marriage is still there. However, because they've built such a healthy relationship with themselves, it's almost as though like, do I have to share that with anybody?
I don't want to share me.
I know. And it's so messed up because I'm also like, okay, but deep down they might still really want love. But I think there's the idea of disappointment. Somebody also said, and I heard this and it really resonated, there's no ROIs in it, right? So what is my return on investment if I pour into all this and then it doesn't work? Which is a real messed up point of view to have. However, I think it is realistic. When you're entering into a relationship, especially when you're after 40, there is a greater sense of, I know who I am.
Yeah.
You know, I'm comfortable with who I am. I know what I'm going to accept. I know what I'm not going to accept.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of like, can I be flexible enough to know, okay, the person that's coming into my life is not going to be 100%, but what are some of the things that I can be like, okay, I can rock with this. That's an absolute no.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, because we are finding more people are actually getting married later in their lives, in the 40s, because what I'm seeing is there's a trend of women, first-time women getting married after 40 for the first time getting married. So it's kind of just like that whole getting married when you're young. No, I think now we've kind of broken that whole mold of, no, you don't have to be married and have kids and everything in your 20s. And honestly, your brain isn't even fully developed until you're 25. So why are you getting married in the first place? You don't know who you are. So now as you're learning these things about yourself, be hardcore on what it is that you will accept and won't. If you know having kids is a major thing for you and the person coming in and saying, I don't want that. Okay, you've made that decision. No need to settle anymore or try to hope and pray. Well, if I do this and then I get them to really see, no. They've made it very clear. Now you didn't want to accept that. So you got to take ownership of that.
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like this podcast isn't long enough because I wanted to get into the religious aspect of it, because because you're doing therapy, right? And so you're like, I'm hearing what you're saying. Yeah, I'm repeating it back to you. Here's my advice, but then you still might be met with but I'm gonna pray about it. How do you advise people when they meet you with that kind of response to a suggestion that you've given them?
Well, my biggest thing is my job as a therapist, I can't tell you what to do. I can only present all the aspects out to you, put it on the puzzle, help you connect the dots. But what I will say is I always have my clients go back to this one exercise I created. It's called head, heart, gut. Your head is going to be logical. It's going to tell you everything that makes sense. Your heart is going to tell you all the things, all the feelings, and all that other good stuff. So you got to acknowledge your head. You got to acknowledge your heart. Now, what is your gut telling you? Because for me, I always look at it as, I identify as a Christian, but spirituality is spirituality. But typically your higher being is speaking to your gut, because that's the one place that will never lie to you. And if we're being honest with ourselves, you already know the answer. You just needed help to explore it and to make sense out of it. So now the decision is on you, because now that you know what your gut is, if you go against that, you got to take all the consequences that come with it.
I just felt my stomach tighten up. What does my gut say? You got me out here, Olivia Popin.
Yeah, because a lot of times we don't pay attention to it. We just go operating off of head and heart, head and heart, head and heart. How many times have our head got us in trouble because we out-logicked, and then our heart is because we just felt all the feelings. You're supposed to manage the two. It's not supposed to be this one is ruling everything, this part is ruling everything. No. We know, we understand what is our choice and what is the best choice for us.
Oh my gosh. Lauren Michelle, you have been amazing.
Thank
you
you
so much for coming on the podcast. Is there anything you want to leave the people with? Although that was a really good one.
Ciao. I really want women over 40 to really take this into consideration. You've worked your behind off to get to where you're at. Now it's not the time to settle. Now it's not the time to play it small. Now it's the time to live boldly and beautifully and big. So make sure that all of the decisions and the actions that you are taking are there to support this version of you, not that insecure version of you.
Thank you so much for coming on the pod, you guys.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Fox After 40. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe in the comments below. And I will see you guys in the next episode.